What if is such an interesting way to start a conversation. It opens up so many options and really allows you to just take away the parameters of everything, every conversation, every thought you're going to have. But what if we were to get married? Imagine the tension and the excitement that comes along with a question like that. What if we went skydiving on your birthday? Some people are like, yes. Other people are like, oh, no. What if I said no? What if your wife tried to kill you like all the Lifetime movies that are out there, slowly poisoning them, and they don't know it for such a long time? Yeah. What if your daughter or your son came to you and said, you know that friend, that boy, that girl that I've been hanging out with, what if I told you they weren't really friends? We were maybe more than friends. And what if, honey, I told you that Daddy knows how to make people disappear? Sometimes it just happens. We're magical that way, us dads. I remember playing this game when I was growing up, taking vacations with my grandparents. We'd always take summer vacations with my grandparents, and we're driving down the road. And when I was driving, we had cassette players, right? Like we would listen to, my brother had a cassette and I had a cassette. You learned that thing like crazy. Then you might switch it. I remember taking vacations, and some of you, this is the way you took vacations, which would freak drivers out now to have someone looking you square in the eyes sitting in the back of that station wagon. I loved cars like that. But I remember sitting in the back, listening to my cassette deck, driving to Florida at 55 miles an hour tops from Ohio, or going to the Wisconsin Dells. What's a Dell? I was there and I still have no idea. They said, we're going somewhere. We got in the car and that's how it went. But we played the game What If? Because you can only do so many things back in the day that some of you remember vacations like this and some of you remember vacations a little more like this. But you had to find a way to kill some time, especially when 55 miles an hour is the top speed to Florida from Ohio. So me and my brother would pass the time and we would play those games. And they always ended up sort of the same way, right? So what if when you grew up you were a pro baseball player or basketball or football or whatever season it was at that point, and then you'd stop and you'd think about it and you're like, yeah, I'd be playing for this team, and you know, I bought mom a house and I bought you a house, and we're just passing around houses like it's candy, and you know, I'm buying all of these cars, and or what if you won the lottery, dude? What if you won if I won the lottery? And it sort of ends up going to the same place again. I'm buying mom a house, I'm buying you a house, and you know, I'm setting everybody up with cars and everything else. Or one of our favorites, one of my uncles lived in Hawaii. What if we lived in Hawaii? Oh yeah. Then at the beginning of March every year when my allergies go crazy and I lose my voice, I don't. How about that? Like, I'm excited about that. But it always sort of ended when we got to the money and the fun. It never was like, what if you won the lottery? Who's taking out the trash now? Who's washing the dishes? Who's folding the fitted sheets? Like, you never got to that stuff. It was always the fun stuff. But remember when you were younger and you had these dreams, and they came from just spending time, just time thinking through things, not just being dialed in on everything, but you had time to sort of think and dream. But do you remember when you quit dreaming? When you quit dreaming about being Superman or a princess or the president? So often we as parents and adults keep telling our kids, you know, you got to grow up, you got to grow up, you got to grow up. And then one day all of us do, and the dreams go away. The dreams of being so much more than maybe what we are right now. I mean, how many of you thought that you would be doing the job, living in the place that you're living right now when you were 10 years old and dreaming about what your future would be like? When did you quit dreaming? Our dreams now are limited to 5 o'clock on Friday, and then it stops on Sunday, so much so that we have songs written about it. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? So I just But we have these spreadsheet dreams. They have to fit into the box. They require this much of everything, and if I don't have those things, then I can't have this dream. But there was a time when you dreamed without limitations. You dreamed without living inside of the box or making them fit into the spreadsheet. And I hope today that we can start something fresh and you begin to dream bigger again. That we will do something more and be something more and be a part of something more. Something bigger than you by yourself. Something bigger than me by myself. That when we come together, things really begin to change and the dream really becomes big. This is week number 1 in a series that I hope can change the world. But for that to happen, everyone in here, everyone that attends Catalyst, not just on when we spring forward and we have our really committed folks here, but all of us must go all in. I will be asking you some questions that hopefully will move you, prepare you, and challenge you to push all of your chips in and go all in. This dream has been a slow coming dream here at Catalyst. It's been more than 11 years. It's been 3+ buildings that we've looked at over these 11 years and thought for sure this is the one we're going to be in. And now we're 1 permit away, 1 week away from starting building and being able to be in a building that is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week building, a safe place for everyone. And I want to be clear. I will be asking for a commitment from every one of you. A commitment of prayer, if nothing else. Because I believe when we go to the throne of God, that He has all the power, all the resources that we need. And what needs to happen, whether it is work, whether it is finances, whether it is different talents and abilities, He has those available to them, and they might not be sitting in this congregation right now. But some of them are definitely sitting in this congregation right now. So what we're going to be doing is asking on March 29th, we'll be asking for a commitment from everyone. On the way out today, you will get a pamphlet, and we figured this out after first service, that will look identical to your bulletin, but is not your bulletin. It will have information in it like frequently asked questions. How do I commit? What are options to committing? Why are we moving to this building? Where is this building? How can I get there? All of the above. It will answer all of those. It does look just like the bulletin that many of you put in your popcorn bucket, but it is not. So please take the pamphlet that we will give you. Don't make them run you down and chase them to your car, because they will. They did it last service. They'll do it again, or it sounds fun. They didn't really do that, but I like to think that they would. So God has grown Catalyst in the past 5 years, despite only having this building from 7:15 to 12. Despite all of our stuff having to fit in a closet in the bathroom, in the back of a few of our cars. We have moved from 84 people to over 128 people, and we have only stopped there because we've run out of room at second service. We averaged 150 in January and averaged 127 in February because in January, we ran out of room. Families had to split, so they didn't come as often, or they don't come anymore. And I'm tired of seeing that happen. I'm tired of people leaving and not being part of the family or not knowing Jesus or whatever it is. And I think things have to change, and they can change when all of us decide to commit. Our dream is to be in a place where we can connect with people, the grace of Jesus, as a loving family that so many people have never been a part of. We think because we grew up a certain way with great moms and dads or with horrible or no moms and dads, that everybody grew up the same way. And for those people who grew up with great moms and dads, that's fantastic. But you don't think about the people who grew up without them. And they don't know any difference until they come in contact with some people who will love them unconditionally, who will show them the grace and love of Jesus that maybe they've never experienced before. You see, at this new building, we will have lights and sounds and TVs and dedicated kids spaces. I know Holly and any of you who work in the kids areas, the nursery, the K through 5, are very excited about this. I know we have people who come here said, when we get into a building, I want to start volunteering, but I ain't working in that movie theater. Could you imagine working in a movie theater, kids K through 5, trying to have fun in a 4-foot aisle? And then, after you get them all having fun and you want to give them the lesson, now we sit them in leather reclining chair, and you've got, 10 to 20 kids doing that the whole time, seeing how fast they can run the aisles, seeing how fast they can run across, seeing if they can climb from level to level by not reclining the seats. This is what our children's area looks like. The other thing is our children's area, we do everything that we can to keep it safe. We have the tables out there. We make sure people watch. We make sure parents have to check in, all of the above. But if you've been here for a while, you know in the summertime and during spring breaks that there are movies between here and there. And I don't want that anymore. I don't want families leaving because they feel like their kids aren't safe, because there isn't a doorway keeping the adults from the kids. I don't want that to happen anymore, and I know that it's happened. I have talked to families who have said, I just feel like we need to be at a place that has the kids area for us. I'm like, I'm sorry to hear that, but I understand. I understand. What I want us to think about as we start to move into this building is that we are moving out of our parents' house. Right now we are in our parents' house, and everything is as it should be, but we live under our parents' rules. So we get to show up at 7:15 and we have to be out at noon. We only get this little bathroom closet over here to keep our stuff. And then we move out and we rent. In our next building, we get to do whatever we want to do. We get to grow up. We get to move the chairs around. We get to put the doors where we want to. We get to paint. We get to change how things look and how things feel so that when people come in, they feel welcome. And then from there, we will move on and we will have our first house. And we will be under our rules again with no limitations. This is where we are heading. But we have got to get out of this to where they say we're showing movie theaters starting at 12:30 in here, whether you like it or not, in between the adults and the kids area, whether you like it or not. Well, I don't like it, and I'm tired of it, and I think God has created a solution for us. Because what God wants us to do, has always wanted us to do, and we've made this very clear, is to introduce the world to the real Jesus, one person at a time. See, Catalyst is not about a building. It is about people. But this building is a tool that will help us introduce people to Jesus, the real Jesus, as we get to spend time in the lobby and as we bring in groups throughout the week who want to meet there and we just get to interact with them. See, Catalyst is a safe place where everyone is welcome. And I hope that you hear the word everyone. Because for some of you, that is a frightening thought. And I want you to be frightened by that thought. I want you to work through that a little bit. What does it mean that everyone is welcome? I mean, prepared to get uncomfortable. Take off that perfect Christian hat. And let's think about something just a little bit more. Was there any time that Jesus was uncomfortable? Was there any time in Scripture? Now, we talked about this before, how there are different layers of Scripture, and most of us are at the Peshat, the top surface level, which is life-changing. Such good teachings. Maybe all the teachings you have heard have come out of this Peshat level. But there are different levels below it, and we've got to understand the culture as we move into this. So what we have to understand is Jesus was Jewish. Might be frightening for a lot of people. But Jesus was a Jewish man from a Jewish family who grew up in a Jewish house, had Jewish teachers, Jewish friends, lived by Jewish rules in a Jewish community. We've got to think about this. If you've grown up in small towns, you don't get this. If you think about like Philly, Chicago, New York, places like that, where you go to Little China. Why do you go to Little China? Because all the Chinese people live there. Why? Because when they moved here, they said, we know our people. We know our culture. We don't want to lose it. There are Jewish communities in New York right now who speak fluent Hebrew. They don't know that other people don't speak Hebrew because they only stay in their blocks. My buddy grew up in the South Bronx, and it was Puerto Rican where he was at. For about a 5 square block area, like that's just all it was. And that's where you lived. This is the town that Jesus grew up in. People back then didn't have cars and were able to travel all over the place and come in contact with all different places and cultures. They didn't do that. Jesus only knew what it was to be Jewish. With Jewish friends, Jewish teachers, Jewish language, Jewish customs, Jewish foods that you ate and you did not eat. And then he gets dropped into a place where people are different. See, we want to create a safe place here. A safe place where a messy place for messy people. Because this place will never be clean and in order if we are bringing in people who are constantly coming in with their messes, and all of us have messes. From the drunks to the addicts, the prostitutes, those who have been sexually abused, the escorts, people who have had abortions and people who have given them, those people who have attempted suicide. And here's the thing that I know that most of you don't know. These people are already here. Some people will admit it, and some people won't. But when they come and they are able to share with me what they're going through right now, I know for a fact that these people are already at Catalyst, and it can be very uncomfortable. But they are here because they have run into a place of truth, grace, and mercy. A place where everyone is welcome at Catalyst without prejudice, judgment, or bitterness. They are looking for this loving family that they've seen movies about and they've heard stories about, but they've never encountered. But they have got to get to the place. They have got to get to those people. So let's think about Jesus being Jewish and his Jewish community and everything that's going on. Now let's get into Mark chapter 2. Once again, Jesus went beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. And as he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting in the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him. Jesus spent more than 80% of his time out in the Galilee. He did more than 80% of his ministry around the Sea of Galilee. You'll also see it sometimes in the scriptures called the Lake of Gennesaret. So he's there. And let's think about this. Jesus, a Jewish man, Jewish family, friends, Jewish brain, everything. And God says to him very clearly, walk up and invite this man. As he's walking up to this tax collector's table, what's going through Jesus' mind? What are his emotions? What will people think? What will they think when I walk up to him? What will they think when I talk to him? What will they think when he follows me? What will they think when I get to his house? I've got to believe there was some anxiety for Jesus, because there would be some anxiety for any of us if this was happening to us. And just because he is the Son of God does not mean he doesn't have to overcome anxiety. It means he does overcome anxiety. And he walks up to Levi, and he's sitting at the tax collector's booth where no one wants to be, but everyone has to go. And Jesus told Levi, get up and follow him. And he did. And while Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And when the teachers of the law who were Pharisees saw him eating with the sinners and the tax collectors, they asked the disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? Let's pause here for just a second. In all of my undergrad and all of my master's teaching, I came out believing that the Pharisees were the enemies, that the Pharisees were evil. But when we know history and we know why the Pharisees are the way they are, there's a reason. Notice when you're reading your Old Testament, when you're reading the Older Testament, there are no Pharisees there. And then all of a sudden, we have this period in between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then Pharisees are everywhere. What happened during that time is they said, we are so tired of going back into slavery. It's just a constant thing. We're in Egypt and then Assyria and Babylon, now Rome. We're so tired of this happening. We've got to create a buffer. We've got to put some guardrails in to where we just don't go do that anymore. And they created the educational system for the rabbis, for the Pharisees, for the Sadducees. And their lone job was to make sure that you didn't hang out with the wrong people, that you didn't talk to the wrong people, that you didn't think the wrong way, and you thought the correct way. So when they see Jesus eating here with all of these sinners and his disciples, they have got to know, why does he eat with the tax collectors and sinners? Because their one job is to make sure we don't get carried back off into slavery again. They have got to ask. The Pharisees are not the enemies. They are the buffers in our lives. They are the guardrails that keep us safe. On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. And I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners." Man, I love me some Jesus. I love knowing that when I was at my worst, Jesus came and found me. And where you were all kinds of wrecked and you didn't have anything together, he chased you down day after day. I think Steve Miller had it wrong. I believe Jesus was the original gangster of love. Anyone? Anyone? If you don't know Steve Miller, you got to go listen to Steve. That's your homework on the way home. Listen to Steve Miller. So we know that he hung out with tax collectors and sinners. But that's just one story, Scott. But what about when he was at a man's house and a prostitute came and poured oil all over his feet and anointed him, and that prostitute ended up being the sister of one of his best friends, the sister of the man Lazarus who he raised from the dead? How about when Jesus decided he needed to go to a different place, and instead of walking around Samaria like every other good Jewish man did, he walked through Samaria, and he got to that well where that Samaritan woman was, where she just needed freedom. She just needed love. And she received it that day because she ran into the real Jesus at that well. And her life was so drastically changed that she went back, and everybody who came in contact with her said, "Something is different about you." And she told them the story, and about the whole town was giving their life to Jesus at that point. This is what Jesus does over and over and over again. He did it in the New Testament, and he's still doing it today with those of us sitting here. I'll tell you, we don't have enough chairs for the people that I want to see sitting here. For your family members, your friends, your neighbors who need to encounter the love of Jesus, the mercy and the grace, the forgiveness. And they need to come in contact with Jesus. And the only way they're coming in contact with Jesus these days is when they come in contact with you. Because Jesus is living inside of you and desperately wants to get to them. Jesus loved being around the outcasts. And here at Catalyst, whether you like to admit it or not, we're all outcasts in our own way. And Jesus wants to bring the only thing that Jesus can bring: a second chance, another second chance. I want to see people coming together from Oak Ridge and Stokesdale, Greensboro, High Point, Thomasville, parts unknown, right? Wherever they are, I want to see them meeting together in one place. And when they hear, when they come in contact with the real Jesus, I've got to believe their reaction will be like this 29-year-old woman who gets her hearing for the first time.
There you go. So now technically your device is on. Can you tell? Oh, that's exciting. Here, you can put it down for a second. Just get used to the sound. What does it sound like?
That sounds like freedom. That sounds like love and mercy and grace. That sounds like somebody who's run into Jesus for the first time. See, everybody's welcome. Without prejudice, judgment, or bitterness. It means exactly what it says, everybody. It means they will hear and come in contact with the ultimate giver of love, mercy, and grace, the one who brings joy to the people who are desperate for it. See, everyone wants to be on a winning team. And I ask that for the next 4 weeks, you go and you pray about what your part is to develop this winning team. If our communion servers want to go ahead and get ready. What does it look like for you? What is it worth to you to have a place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where people will be set free? People who have never had a loving family will have a loving family. Who have never run into a place without prejudice, judgment, or bitterness will be able to become regularly. What does it look like for you with your time, with your talent, with your treasure? Because we need you doing what you do. And this is very scriptural because God has given some the gift of managing money. And if you're going to give generously, is what he says. If you're going to teach, you need to be teaching. We had our one lead guitar player call in sick this morning because we have one. We'd love to have more. And I believe there are people out there, I believe maybe there are people in here who have talents and abilities who have not pushed all of their chips in yet, and we can't move forward without you pushing all of your chips in. And what I'm not asking for, I am not asking for equal giving. I'm not asking for everybody to spend an extra $100, but equal sacrifice. And I want you to ask God what he has set you up for, what challenge he has put on your heart to move things forward. What does going all in look like for your family? Because it will look different for your family than it will for my family, than it will for a different family. But when all of us push all of our chips in and we go all in, the world can be changed. Starting right here. Ask God to let you know. And listen to what he has to say. And then take action on what he has to say. As we move into this time of communion, some of you need to go back over the last week, month, year, and ask God for forgiveness, something you haven't been forgiven for. You need to admit to God, you need to confess to God something that maybe you've never confessed before. If this is your first time here and you don't understand this communion thing, just let it all pass by. Some of you need to go back and need to retrace your steps and thank God for the blessings he has put in your life that went unnoticed. But one of the things we like to do here at Catalyst is every week we like to take communion. We like to slow down, spend some time quietly with God, and let him speak into our hearts. And this is your time.